positive news. Guys, the third results of the atmospheric oxygen content is still not satisfactorily showing 20% like it should do again. It is just peaking over the second mark, which is an indication it's around 15%, the atmospheric oxygen. Now we may have stumbled on something here, and I'll explain and show you a couple of other things later on in this video. So let's get on with it.
So I've already, guys, looked at a lot of data regarding this, and some of it was quite alarming. I'm not sure of the accuracy of it, right, but some scientific journals are stating, you can look up this for yourselves, that we've got about 4,000 years worth of oxygen, and around about 3,600 of those years in the future we're going to reach critical scale, and you know that's going to be of serious consequence to anything that breathes oxygen on this planet at that point. That means that if we don't change our business right now, the human species is going to be extinct, according to what I've read, in 4,000 years. Now, I know most of us, and we all are very much capable of just saying, well, you know what, we live in now, it doesn't matter. But just imagine being at that critical point where it's becoming very difficult to do anything because you literally are lacking at that point in oxygen. Let's try and piece together something really important, guys. I think you're going to be impressed by the end of this upload. As we can see, looking at this chart, we've got oxygen on the top graph, and at the lower end we've got CO2, and we can see that from 1989 to 2017 there's been a linear depletion of oxygen, and there has been a linear increase in CO2 at the bottom. Okay, let's have a look at something else before we go any further. Okay, so I'm going to go to the chart of the 400 years sunspot observations, but before I do, you can see there's unsettled geomagnetic field at the moment, but I don't think it will come to anything. And as you can see yourself, guys, you can either go on poleshiftnews.com, view it for yourselves, but there's no sunspots on the disk, and we know why that is, because we're at the end of the solar cycle and we are beginning a grand solar minimum. But if we go down to the 400-year sunspot observations with regards to this depleting oxygen and the readings that we've taken over the last few days, I want to point out something. On the last chart we just looked at with the oxygen linearly declining, you could see that from 1989 to the present time there was a linear depletion, right? So what could have possibly caused then a depletion of the oxygen during that period of time? Okay, so if we look at what is the most significant, now understood but not widely by the organisations, driver of the climate, it is sunspot activity. And as you can see, that from 1950s to almost the present day, we have been in almost a modern maximum. And what that means is that since, say, for the last 67 years, we've been enjoying a warmer period solely down to the fact that there's been more sunspots on the disk. And as that has been taking place, there has been some warming on the surface of the oceans around the world, at least at surface intervals. Now what that does is release oxygen, and you know, since the 1760s we've been engaged in an industrial revolution. You know, we've been burning carbon fuels, but any fuel that's burnt from that point on till now will have an effect of some sorts on the reservoir of oxygen in our atmosphere. And I think I'm getting close to being quite right, because a lot of things are making sense now. So just for the sake of why now we're probably seeing a depletion in the atmosphere when we've been seeing a depletion in the oceans for quite some time, because at surface levels the oxygen's released out of the water and CO2 is absorbed more easily in warmer water. The oxygen is released in that warmer water, so we might have found that as we was using up lots of atmospheric oxygen, it was being replaced by the surface layer of the oceans. Now, if you remember, only about 4 or 5 weeks ago over here in the UK, I don't think it was even that long ago, we had a massive crustacean die-off where, you know, tons of starfish and other crustaceans washed up on the beach and died. Now, as the layer of oxygen in the sea gets thinner and thinner, these animals have to migrate to a location where the oxygen is more readily available. The other thing is that the oxygen isn't easily transferred to the lower parts of the sea if the surface is warmer, and that is the part that's exchanging the oxygen with the atmosphere at the surface. So, you know, we have seen, not just around the coastlines of the UK recently, but around the coastlines of many continents around this world, crustaceans and massive die-offs of these things. I think it's a relationship of the oxygen is being scrubbed clean out of the water, out of the oceans, and they're trying to get as close to the surface now as they can in order to, you know, breathe oxygen underwater. And as a result of that, they get too close to the coastal lines and end up being washed up on the beach as a result of it. Now, I said earlier, you know, that some of the documents that I've read over the last few days means we've got all of a sudden a keen interest in atmospheric oxygen. You know, we are facing in 4,000 years' time, a complete clean-up of the oxygen reservoir in our atmosphere. And at 3,600 years, it's going to become quite significantly critical at that point for anything alive on this planet that breathes oxygen. I think we're going to come to this point a lot quicker. I don't think it's going to be in the next 5 or 10 years, but I think it's going to be a lot less than 3,600 years before we hit the critical level. And if those test results are correct that I've been conducting over the last few days, and I have a suspicion that we are correct, that it is around about 15 to even 17, maybe 18%. Right, there might be one of the last shot I'm going to try is I'm going to recreate the experiment today. I'm going to just leave it running for as long as it needs to see if we can get anywhere close to 20% as what it should be at this altitude. If not, we're faced with what it is. And if not, guys, I think we could be reaching critical levels of oxygen in our atmosphere a lot sooner than what we think. I just want to say one other thing. One of the things I was thinking of doing was building an oxygen gas analyzer. I thought, you know, these things would be really expensive to buy, and well out of my capabilities to build, but you know, I think I could knock one up. But the point is, when I calibrate it, you know, what am I going to calibrate it at? 20.9%, or at what we're seeing in these, you know, simple experiments. And we say they're simple experiments, but if any laboratory has a doubt of the gas analyzers that they're using is giving incorrect information, you know what they're going to resort to? That same test that we've been conducting ourselves. I'm just saying that over the last few days, those test results ain't been nowhere near the 20% of oxygen that is supposed to be in our atmosphere, and there is nothing wrong with the atmosphere in that test tube. You know, there's no difference between the atmosphere in the test tube and it. If we load that up with air, you know, all around us, dry air, then it should give us the results of 20%, and it clearly doesn't. The other thing is, with this recent period of modern maximum of sunspots, you know, lavishing warmer climates, at least up until 2007, it has created another problem. It's raised the ocean levels. Now, I'm surprised how many scientific seminars I've watched over the last few years, over the last few days, with regards to oxygen depleting and, you know, the knock-on effects that that's having. Now, you ain't going to believe this, guys, but it makes a lot of sense. Somehow, this has affected a lot of people. We're talking hundreds of thousands of people all over these eastern parts and central parts of the earth. to the point where they've had to move because of sea levels rising. And this has caused a massive influx of migrants. And Europe have been trying to do something about this, but they've not specifically related it, nailed it cleanly down to the oxygen depleting in the atmosphere, causing, knock-on effects with sea level rising, as we are witnessing. Now, they might be right in the fact that the oxygen is depleting and the sea levels are rising, but that's not exactly what they're telling the general public. And apparently some of these countries are swamped out with migrants because they've got nowhere to live, as, where they used to live around coastal areas, their land has already been, taken now by the oceans. And this is a problem that's going to get worse, and more pressure is going to be put on, northern western countries to take more migrants in. Now, I think this could be more the reason, even taking migrants in these northern western countries is, of beneficial to, say, governments and economies, because, there's a new influx of, cheaper labour. But they're not saying the real reasons why they're having to migrate. There's even talk, you won't believe this, guys, from the stuff that I've been watching. I have to dig up some of the links for you. There's even talk of issuing a new passport somewhat similar to that what was brought out. I think it's the Nansen passport brought out just after the last Second World War for migrants to travel. I think the Nansen passport was welcomed in 50 countries, and anyone carrying one of these passports. This was from these people, the refugees of the aftermath of the last Second World War, that was given them. There was something like 50 countries that was prepared to accept these people in and allow them to work and reside in these countries. Now, there's a new Nansen. It hasn't been stated that that's going to be the case this time. There's a new passport going to be coming out, or they're trying to get it. And this, guys, this has been welcomed already by a lot of countries. And these people are going to get these passports, and they're going to be allowed to reside in these northern western countries as a result of them having to migrate because of the losing the lands. This is something, what I'm saying is, I didn't even know until I really started to look into this, what was, that it is actually taking place right now. The effects of this are happening, and I just want to say this, guys. If we're at 15% atmospheric oxygen now, it won't be long before we do reach critical levels. We've never had so many people on this planet. We're at 7 billion plus souls right now. We've got farming techniques now which are intensively rearing cattle, so there's more cattle in localized areas. What I'm saying is, all across the range, it's completely just draining the oxygen content out the atmosphere. You just imagine 7 billion people on the planet, and quite a few of them do have cars. Imagine all the logistics behind sustaining this amount of people, ships, aircraft, you name it, across the range. You just cannot keep taking stuff out the atmosphere and it not being replaced fast enough to keep up with the demand. We've already passed clearly the sustainable demand amount that can be replenished, to the point where we are scrubbing the oceans now 3 times faster than what we are taking it out of the air. So the oxygen out of the air is being absorbed, and as a result of that, it is lifting the oxygen straight out of the sea to replace that reservoir. The reserve stocks are in the oceans, and that's where the replenishing is taking place now, but at 3 times the rate of what we're losing it in the atmosphere. We cannot continue going about our business like this. It is going to have a serious detriment at some point in our future, or for our future generations, where they are going to start witnessing mass die-offs of land creatures because there won't simply be enough oxygen in this atmosphere. We don't know if this was the case what killed the dinosaurs. We don't know how much sputtering's taking place over the South Atlantic anomaly as a result of the weakened magnetosphere right now. But I'm just saying, guys, things are stacking up massively against us all on this planet. And, if we all take the attitude that we're okay for now, the sun's coming up for, today, and it'll be rising tomorrow, then things are never going to change. Human continuity won't last 4,000 years on this planet, and we will be like those dinosaurs, extinct. And like I say, we don't know if this is a reoccurring event. We don't really know. We can guess what happened to the dinosaurs. Some say it was a massive meteorite impact, because all these dinosaurs died out at a certain level underground, and if we calculate the ground at which they died off, we get an idea of how long ago that was. But all the remains are at the same level, at almost the same parts around the world, indicating they died out at the same time. In another million years, whatever intelligent species is on this planet might find the remains of us, guys. We are intelligent beings. We can do something about this. But unless we all do something about it, we are leaving a legacy of doom and gloom for our future generations. This, we may have stumbled on it by, just curiosity, but for me, it is something worth more investigation. And that is exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to rerun the experiment again, and I'm going to leave it even longer because, as you've seen yesterday when I was doing the video, we could see that it absorbed very quickly the first, centimetre or cubic centimetre of water in that graduated test tube. It consumed the oxygen very quickly for the first 10, but it was the next 4-5% which took even longer to achieve. So maybe, it might be a fact that inside that chamber, oxygen, it could be one or two reasons. It could be what it is. There is no more oxygen in there, therefore the reaction has stopped. There will be no more oxidation if there's no oxygen in there. It's not that there's a lack of steel wool, and it's not that there's a lack of encouragement by the acid we've placed on the steel wool, because both of those, if I take that sample out of that tube, you can still smell the vinegar on there very, potently. So, the vinegar's not gone anywhere. And you can also see there is steel wool there to be oxidised. So, I'm happy that the experiment's been conducted in a reasonable manner, and it should give reasonable results. And, we're not seeing that. We're seeing 15%, 14%. So, I'll give it the benefit of the doubt. I'll give it a bit longer. We'll give it 48 hours, and then a bit longer than that. So, beginning of next week, we'll find out where we are, one way or another. I think we should be able to draw a conclusion with full results. And, with what I've read already, it's already commonly known that we are stripping the atmosphere of the reservoir of oxygen. And right now, the only thing that's being done is a shift of people around the planet as a result of sea floor rising. But I will say this, we are in a modern maximum, and it is going to take time before the oceans cool back down to some form of equilibrium. And at that point, the surface of the oceans can hang on to the oxygen. So, for now, it seems the Earth is doing a great job of resolving this problem by shifting into a cooler state as a result of the sunspots being lower. But, we've got to also take into account that we are going into magnetosphere depletion and a pole shift. And that's not good in its own rights. Guys, there's a link down there if you want to support this research. I'd like to think that you would agree that what we do on this small platform is of value. You can see things are, gradually starting to stack up against all of us now. And the results are before us. Yes, the magnetosphere is weakening. The magnetic poles are migrating for the first time in 780,000 years, and at that, we're at a point of technological advancement where there is no work for human beings. It's going to get worse. The oxygen is depleting. It seems as though things are slowly but surely stacking up against us. It's almost like nature almost wants to change the way we do business if we don't want to do it ourselves. You know, what are we waiting for? Like I say, link down there if you value the research that we do on this channel. We've got our own observatory. We've got a dedicated website, Poleshift News, and you know, I'll say what I usually do, guys. You know, enjoy your weekend, and bye for now.